Hello, everybody. Can you hear me well? Good. Can you understand me well? Good, even better. And before we start, let's test the sound because we will need sound today. Just quick test.
VoiceOver on Chrome, accessible charts done right.
Can you hear it well? Good.
VoiceOver off.
So first of all, thank you very, very much for coming. I really appreciate that. So many people came after lunch. I really like that. Or maybe so many people like accessibility topics, which is also the case, right? If you're here, probably you want to know something about accessibility. And thank you for organizers for organizing such a nice event. I really like that. I really like the room and the Zagreb. We had a nice tour yesterday, so everything is fine, and let's start. Oops. Yep. My name is Sergei Kriger. I'm a front-end developer at the company called Shudder. It's a big web agency in Germany with offices in Hamburg, Berlin, Prague, Munich, where I'm from, and Frankfurt. And we are building web applications for the clients like Allianz, Audi, BMW, and many others. And besides front-end development, I'm really, really interested in accessibility, and this is our topic for today. We are going to talk about accessible charts. All right, let's start. Do you guys know how many people live in the world right now? Something about this number. And this is a statistics by population in top 10 countries. And look at this chart. Actually, you don't even need to see the numbers in order to understand that in top 2 countries are living much more people than in the rest of it, right? And this is another chart about population in different regions. And again, with no numbers, it's clear enough that more than half people in the whole world are living in Asian region. There is no doubt that we perceive graphical information much easier and much faster than the plain text. But unfortunately, there is a big group of people who cannot enjoy a beauty of charts we are creating. Those are people with visual impairments. And we need to understand that 270 million of people will not be able to see our charts we are building clear enough. Those are people with low vision. And more than 300 million of people will not be able to recognize any colors in our charts because of color blindness. And some of the people, 187 million of people will see our charts this way because those people are mostly aged people. And for some people, for 36 million of people, our charts will not even exist. Those are blind people. And the question is, since charts are nothing more than graphics, is it even possible to make charts for everybody? Well, the short answer, yes, of course. It's not always easy, it's not always obvious, but it is possible. And during this presentation, I will be focusing your attention on a couple of super important things, and this is one of them. It is possible to make accessible charts, period. And today, I'm going to share with you guys my experience, how I did that, and I hope you will find it helpful. And today we will mostly be focusing on screen readers and also on keyboard access. And we will talk a bit about performance, but not about performance in general. We already had a performance talk previously, and it was really nice. But performance from accessibility point of view. And let's imagine that we have a fruit stand. And so far, we just have one seller, and this seller sells only apples for now. And of course, at some point, in order to understand how our business is growing, we really need to see some statistics. And probably our first statistics will look like that. Simple chart, nothing too complicated. It shows us how many kilograms of apples we sold per each day in this time period. And now, let's think together how we can make this chart accessible for visually impaired people. Well, the first way and the easiest way and maybe the fastest way is to consider a chart as an image, and actually a chart is an image, right? And add a description to the whole chart as we do with other images. Let's try to make a description for this chart. Probably the easiest, and simplest description will be like that. Nothing too detailed, just some information which tells you that this is a chart and it shows you some statistics without any numbers. Of course, it's maybe not something that we really want to have in our websites, but it's obviously better than nothing. And now look at this chart. Even if this chart contains the same dates and the same values, it tells the user totally different information. It tells the user that there was a goal to sell 4 kilograms a day, and this goal was achieved only in 2 days. And please make sure that this description is not static anymore. It contains some dynamic data from server or from wherever you take this data. And another super important thing to understand here is that we can describe the same chart in many different ways. And as developers, when we are building charts, we need to understand what this particular chart should tell the users. And we need to create our descriptions based on this. And the technical part of adding a description is super simple. We can use alt attribute, for example, and add a description to it. And please make sure that if you are using libraries like D3 or Charts.js or Google Charts for generating charts, it's going to be SVG image. And unfortunately, not all screen readers are able to recognize SVG as a real image. So we need to tell explicitly to all screen readers that this is an image, and we can do it with a raw EMG. But there is one problem in this code. If you hover on this chart, you will see a default browser tooltip. And there is nothing bad in tooltip, but I don't know any single designer who would like this default browser stuff, and we can make it better. We can replace alt attribute with area label, for example, and in order to give screen reader users even more information about this chart, we can add a description with a desk tag. And if you like this way of making charts accessible, here are a couple of recommendations for you. First of all, please make sure not to add a long description. It's not possible. Well, it's possible, but it's really hard for screen reader users to listen super long text. So text should be descriptive and short enough. Also, if your site is a multi-language website, you need to handle grammar stuff like grammar cases, grammar quantities, and etc. Manually. And also, technical part of this way is super simple. Area label or alt. Depends on what you like more. I personally like area label. And of course, this way is simple and fast, but it works well only for the simple charts. But most often, in most of the cases, we have much more complicated charts, and in order to handle complicated charts, we probably need to find another solution. For example, let's assume that our business is growing, and now we are selling not apples, but also bananas and oranges. And our statistics look like that. In addition to kilograms we are selling every day, we need to take a look at statistics, like how much money we earn each day, some transaction values. And if you try to go the first way and add a description to this chart, the description will look like this. And to be honest, this description contains everything screen reader user needs. All information is here, but obviously, I have a strong feeling that more than half people will not be able to listen this long text even till the middle. So for this kind of complex charts, we really need to think of different solutions. And another way how we can make charts accessible is to make charts readable by screen readers. This is really important. So we're not making a description to the whole chart, but instead we're making readable and focusable each chart element and adding a unique description to every element. From the technical point of view, it's simple again. In order to make any element focusable, we can use tab index attribute with a value 0 or positive numbers. And in order to add a description, we can use area label we already used. But we can make it a bit better. Please look at these values. There are some values here, and there are some dates here. And if you remember the chart, we already have these dates and values in the x and y axis. And in order not to duplicate data in our chart, we can simply exclude x and y axis from accessibility tree with area label. And now let's take a look how it works. This is a chart, and this is a, I should say, accessible chart. And now we're going to test how accessible it is. I'm starting my screen reader now, and we'll try to read all the elements.
VoiceOver on Chrome.
Good. And now I will try to click Tab key and see how that works.
Apples, 3 kilograms sold on July 1st. Group application. Bananas, 3 kilograms sold on July 1st. Oranges, 1 kilogram sold on July 1st.
And the same way we can get data from circles about transactions.
23 euro, July 5th, total transaction value. 31 euro, July 4th, total transaction value. Group voiceover off.
Good, and it's working. And congratulations, guys, we just made a super accessible chart. But there's one problem here. This chart is accessible, yes, but can we imagine the situation when screen reader users will be navigating through our website using tab key, for navigating through all the links, for example. And this way, once they reach our chart in the page, they will have to click through all this chart until they reach the last element, and then they can go further. But what if they don't want to do so? We don't want to force our users to click through our charts, especially if you have many, many elements. So there's one way how we can solve it. The pattern called skip link. It's super simple. You put a link, visual link or hidden link before the element you want to skip, and you point this link to the next element after the element you want to skip. And once the users click this link, they will be simply redirected to the next element. And let's try how that works in practice. This is a super simple dummy chart and some text before and after. And I'm starting my screen reader again and will show you how skip link works in practice.
Voiceover on Chrome. Visited link before. Visited link skip chart.
And this is a skip link. And it was hidden by default, but once this link gets a focus, it gets visible. And now I can click this link with a screen reader and see what happens.
Press visited link skip chart heading.
We just skipped a chart. But what if we wanted to read this chart? Well, it's super simple. We can simply continue clicking tab.
Visited link skip chart. Element 1 group. Element 2 group. Element 3 group. Voiceover off.
So it works. And if you like this way of making accessible charts, here are a couple of tips and recommendations for you. First of all, it's a good practice not to use positive numbers in tab index. Yes, you can use them technically, but it's really bad practice to control manually focus order. If you want to control focus order of elements, especially in charts, but it doesn't matter where you place the element, it's better to control focus order with order of elements in the DOM tree. This is really important. Also, skip link is a nice pattern, and of course, this way is a good one, but let's imagine a big chart, like if you have statistics for a month or for a half a year, for example. It's not a good idea to force users to click like many, many times. So if, in my opinion, chart contains more than, let's say, 20 elements, we need to think of different solutions. And let's imagine again that our business is growing. So now we have 2 sellers, and each of them sell 3 types of fruits. And our statistics now looks like that. So we have all data we need here, and honestly, this data is still accessible, and if we click tab again, we will be able to get all the data. But what if we don't need all the data? What if we only need to know how much money we earned on July 5th? Well, it's still possible to get this data. We need to click many times, and in order to get this data, we need to click 35 times in this particular chart, but charts can be much bigger than this one, right? So it's not really, even if it's accessible, it's not really user-friendly, and we need to think of different solutions for really complex charts. And here we came to another super important thing. We need to understand a difference between accessible charts and accessible data. So far, we tried to make our charts themselves accessible, and it's a really good way to go, but sometimes, if it's not possible, we really need to worry about how accessible is our data and how end users can get our data. And the next way, how we can make charts accessible is to combine charts with other data presentation in the page. What is the best way how to present data? Of course, data tables. And I know, guys, you probably don't like tables because they are it's really hard to style tables and make them responsive. Or I know that previously people used tables for layout, for example, but we have a perfect case for tables. We have data and we need to display data. And in order to combine charts and data in the same page, there are a couple of techniques. And the first technique is simple. You render a chart, as we did previously, and then you hide this chart from accessibility tree with area hidden. And then just after the chart, you display a data built from the same data. So we have 2 data elements in the applications, chart and tables. And then you make this table invisible for all the users. So in order to make any elements still in the DOM tree, still in accessibility tree, but hidden from visually from all the users, we can use pattern called visually hidden. In order to hide an element, we give this element position absolute in order to exclude it from flow, and then we assign 1 pixel width and 1 pixel height in order to make this element kind of invisible but still in the DOM tree. And then in order to hide this 1 pixel, we use a rarely used clip attribute, for example. Another technique how to combine charts and tables is to render both of them. We can use, for example, tabs and render chart in one tab and table in another tab. And if you don't want to render 2 elements at the same time, you can use lazy loading, for example. So it's up to you how you can solve that problem. And here is a really nice example. Here's a website with the statistics in European Union. And in this page, the data presented in 3 different ways. Table, as you see now, then the same data is presented like a chart, exactly what we need, and even more, the same data presented in maps, which makes this particular page super accessible. And when you're dealing with the tables and want to make them accessible, you need to understand that tables are readable by default, but in order to make them accessible, we need to do some stuff. First of all, we need to add a description with a caption tag. And then, in order to associate each data item with its header, row header, and column header, we need to use scope attribute. And this is how it works in practice. We have the same chart. We didn't touch this chart. We simply excluded it from the accessibility tree. And in addition to this chart, we have a couple of simple tables. And I will tell you why we need several tables instead of one just in a second. So this table is for one seller, this table is for another seller, and this is a transaction value table. And the question is, why can't we just use one complex table? Well, technically we can. But the good practice I found in webaim.org website tells us that not all of the screen readers are able to read joint tables elements in headers properly. So in order to make tables accessible by as many screen readers as it can be, we can split the data into several simple tables. And there's another technique how to combine charts and tables. We display a chart as we did previously, and we don't render data table, but we provide to the users links to table-like files like Excel, CSV, PDF, etc. And we can give screen reader users a possibility to choose if they want to download these files or not. And here are some tips about combining charts and tables. First of all, if there is a possibility to split data into several parts and render different data tables of each chunk, please do that. And please avoid using col span and row span because not all screen readers are perfect and some of them cannot read these kind of joint elements properly. And also, if you like the way providing files to the user, it's nice practice to include a file size to the description. Well, now we know 3 ways of making charts accessible. Chart description, making charts readable by screen reader, and also combining charts and tables. What else can we think about in order to make our charts even more accessible? Well, there's one thing. Let's take a look at accessibility from a bit different side. What if some of our users, or many of our users, or maybe all our users cannot access our web page? Even if we have super accessible chart and super accessible navigation, let's say, this is still accessibility issue. And this is a small example. This is another website about statistics, world statistics, and here's a list of countries with the population in each country. And I made a small experiment. Look at these small and nice charts here. I really like this design solution because this chart gives us some dynamics, how population was growing during the time, but there is one problem in this page. I tried to load this page in my not super fast and not super new iPhone 4S. I don't know, somebody using here, same telephone still. I like it, but it's not really fast and it's not really new and browsers are not, like I don't use a latest browser obviously. And I tried to load this page in this iPhone 4 and I got this time. 17 seconds until I could see and interact with these small charts. And 17 seconds is way too much. And to be honest, I'm not a developer of this website, and I don't know for sure if this big time was caused by charts only, but as a developer, I know if at the same time and at the same page I need to render almost 250 charts, I really need to think of performance. So what we can do here? Well, there is one way, and you can see an asterisk here. To be honest, I'm not a fan of this way, but I used it once and it helped. And if you want to use this way, please do A/B testing, for example, or at least some manual testing. So what is this way about? We will not go deeper in this way, but the principles of this way are here. First of all, we don't render our charts in the browsers, but we render our charts in the server. And then we deliver HTML string. This way, we will get rid of heavy chart library like D3 or Google Charts or whatever. And we will get rid of custom code, and we will save custom code for chart rendering, and we will save some browser resources. And if you really worry about performance, you can even get rid of CSS files and add all the stylings in line in the JS. And it looks like a hack, and probably it is a hack. But if it helps you, as it helped me at some point, who cares? It's working. And of course, you need to, if your charts are more or less interactive, you need to handle all the events in the client. But I'm pretty sure it's not a big deal. And that's pretty much it, what I wanted to tell about accessible charts. Let's recap what we learned. In my practice, I used 4 ways of making charts accessible, and I hope you'll find these ways really useful for you. First way is to add a description to the whole chart, as we do with other images. The next way is make charts or chart elements readable and accessible by screen readers. The next way is my favorite way, is to combine charts and tables, because tables are in the web forever and screen readers are amazing at reading tables. And if nothing helps, you can try to render your charts in the server. Who knows, maybe this way it will be the best for you. If you are new in the screen reader world, I would really recommend you to read an article posted in the DQ University website about screen readers, and also you can check my previous presentation about screen readers. If you need some more information about accessibility in general, here are 2 amazing books written by Laura Kolbeck and Hayden Pickering. You will get all the information you need to be able to start making accessible charts. And also during my practice, I have collected a lot of links to resources, accessibility resources, and I put all of them to this gist, so please check it out. And if you are interested in building charts with the D3 library, here are a couple of links for you. First of all, it's a blogs.org website where you can find a lot of examples with different charts, and you can take a look at the code. And also, there's a nice book written by Scott Murray. I really recommend you to read it. And also, if you're interested how to make SVG, not only charts, but any SVG accessible, there is a series of articles written by Leonie Watson. So I really recommend you to check that out. And that's pretty much it. Here's a link to the presentation. If you have any questions, we will not have a QA session right now, but you can find me somewhere around and ask directly, or you can write me on Twitter. Thank you very much.